Now, Prince Edward allegedly could not rest easy, though, this Easter. Prince Edward spends Easter at vacation rental because his perv older brother won't move.
I love this.
Edward was forced to speak to Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, becoming the first to make royal contact since Andrew's arrest in February.
Well, that's interesting.
I guess Edward and his family stay in Wood Farm over Easter, but they couldn't this year because that's where Andrew is currently squatting until Marsh Farm is finished, although the rumor is that he doesn't want to move into Marsh Farm at all.
Is Wood Farm nicer? Like slightly nicer?
I'm going to assume it is, because they describe Marsh Farm as a dump.
It's still like a 5-bedroom home or something.
They had to stay at Sandringham's Gardens house, which is rentable to the public for about $6,000 a week in high season. It really cracks me up imagining some social climbing British family dropping half-truths about spending Easter at Sandringham, having their rental refunded because Andrew won't get his ass up and move. Allegedly, Edward had a quiet word with his brother.
The framing. This, of course, put Edward in an awkward position and forced him to address the problem face-to-face with his brother. Something that's actually illegal for British royals, except under very strict circumstances.
It is so funny. It is so tongue-in-cheek. It's fantastic. A+.
It's come to our attention that Prince Edward was the first member of the royal family to visit his shamed brother, Andrew Mountbatten,
whilst everyone else is at Windsor. So a great fall from grace for him. And as you say, it's the first time a member of his family has spoken to him for months. And that's because he's been dragging his heels. Prince Edward and his wife Sophie were supposed to be staying at Wood Farm for the Easter holidays, but because their brother Andrew hasn't moved in time.
It's also been revealed that Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor once allegedly became embroiled in a physical altercation with a senior aide working for Queen Elizabeth. It's claimed that the then Duke of York attacked Vice Admiral Sir Tony Johnston-Burt, Master of the Household, because he was reportedly unable to fulfil his request to host an event at Buckingham Palace. Do you have any details of this?
Well, this is an extraordinary story, but really it does speak to quite what an odious man the former prince is, and his entitlement and his arrogance. This story's been included in a brand new biography that's coming out this week by Robert Hardman. He's a very reliable source, an incredible writer with very good contacts. So I think there's probably a lot of weight to this story. He says that he was told by a senior household member that when Andrew approached Sir Tony wanting to hold a pitch at palace reception at Buckingham Palace, he was told that there was no room on the schedule, no room in the palace, and that, like everybody else, he would have to wait. Well, Andrew was incensed when told this, absolutely furious. There was a round of expletives, but he didn't just jump his finger at Sir Tony. There was what was described as kinetic blow, which absolutely would have appalled those that witnessed the altercation. Prince Philip got wind of this story, and he was so horrified that he wrote a personal letter of apology to Sir Tony. But I think it's all these stories that paint this fuller picture of the former Duke of York and speak to the fact that he is so disliked for very good reason.
A year ago, there was Andrew, happily ensconced in the magnificent surroundings of Royal Lodge, drove down the road with his children and his ex-wife Sarah Ferguson to attend Easter Matins at St George's Chapel with the entire royal family. Fast forward a year and he's stuck in a farm in remote Norfolk, hasn't been seen by his estranged wife or his children for months, and will be celebrating Easter all on his own whilst everyone else is at Windsor. So a great fall from grace for him, and as you say, it's the first time a member of his family has spoken to him for months. And that's because he's been dragging his heels. Prince Edward and his wife Sophie were supposed to be staying at Wood Farm for the Easter holidays, but because their brother Andrew hasn't moved in time, they're having to stay in the main house. So I think Edward was going there to say, pull your socks up, it's time you went moving into Marsh Farm, which is now ready for...
What a dramatic downfall. These are the shocking facts about Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor's latest clash with the royal family and why they are now pushing him out of yet another residence. What began as a short-term stay has now turned into an awkward power battle that is seriously testing the monarchy's patience. Only months after losing his titles and being removed from the Grand Royal Lodge, the disgraced former royal is once again caught in fresh drama. Andrew has refused to move to Wood Farm, and King Charles has completely had enough.
In the King's position, I suppose, personally, I would have encouraged him to do what his estranged great uncle did, the Duke of Windsor, of course, who lived the rest of his life in exile, having abdicated the throne, ended up having a very pathetic existence in France. But, we know that Andrew has the use of a palace in Abu Dhabi, apparently. They've also got connections in Switzerland, so he's got the choice between a hot climate and a cold climate. There are places he can go and get out of everyone's hair, I would say.
This time he is declining to leave Wood Farm, the smaller house on the Sandringham estate that was supposed to be a temporary place while his main home was being repaired. To fully understand the tension, we need to go back to where it all began. On October 30th, 2025, King Charles finally made a decision many believed was long overdue. He removed his brother from all remaining titles and roles, changing him from Prince Andrew, Duke of York, into simply Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. The reason was obvious. Years of growing pressure due to his links with convicted offender Jeffrey Epstein had reached a breaking point. The king did not speak loudly, but the message was clear. The monarchy could no longer carry the burden of Andrew's damaged image. The real question is, does he even have a reputation left? Imagine Andrew striking a royal staff member.
Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor just before, and he's reportedly had a physical altercation with one of Elizabeth II's most senior aides. This is according to the Telegraph. They're saying that the former Duke of York was accused of lashing out at Vice Admiral Sir Tony Johnston-Burt, the master of the household, allegedly because he could not accommodate a pitch at palace event. His behaviour was so concerning that Prince Philip, his late father, reportedly felt obliged to even write a letter of apology to Sir Tony. It gets worse and worse, doesn't it?
Well, as I say, we're sort of drip feeding the bad stories. There are lots of people who are very close to the palace and the royal insiders who have many stories about their interaction with the former Prince Andrew, and they don't paint a very pretty picture. It is that sort of side, as you say, the Vice Admiral Sir Tony Johnston-Burt, what a glorious name that is, and a great Scrabble score as well. But he was basically master of the royal household. What these events were, the picture of the palace is rather like a dragon's den or a shark tank, is that Andrew, in his basically as a trade envoy, would encourage people to come to the palace. But as the master of the royal household, his job was basically to make sure there's enough room that you could accommodate them. He couldn't on this particular occasion, and this apparently led to an altercation. There were all sorts of reports internally because basically the Vice Admiral was a bit concerned about how he was being treated, and so much so that the brilliant Prince Philip, who I had the joy of meeting on a few occasions, and a wonderful man, basically he had to sort of interfere. But it's one of those stories, again, we don't necessarily have corroboration for that, but from other reports that I've heard about Andrew and his interaction with others, it would certainly seem to be consistent with that.
Yeah.
The removal from Royal Lodge was not just symbolic. It completely broke down his previous lifestyle both practically and emotionally. Andrew had lived in this 30-room mansion in Windsor since 2004. It was a home suited for royalty, featuring a private chapel, a swimming pool, large outdoor areas, and a staff of 28, including 4 chefs and 3 valets. Back in 2003, Andrew paid £1 million for a 75-year lease, expecting to stay there until 2078. However, by January 2026, palace sources made it very clear he needed to leave by January 25th. The embarrassment was total. Andrew eventually left quietly during the night on February 4th, 2026. His large staff was reduced to only 3 people. Wood Farm looked like an ideal temporary option. But even after losing so much, here are the advantages Andrew still has.
These are all of the perks that Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor will still get despite being stripped of all of his titles. Andrew, once known as Prince Andrew, was stripped of his military titles last year by King Charles. He was also handed a notice telling him that he had to leave his Royal Lodge home after over 20 years. He's now moving into Marsh Farm, which is on the Sandringham estate in Norfolk. Despite it being a significant downsize, he is still getting a lot of perks of the royal family. The property is in need of extensive renovations, and it's thought that King Charles is funding this. This includes additional security being put up, so bigger fences, CCTV, and Sky technicians were also seen entering the home. He was said to be appalled at the size of the property, considering it's a big downsize from the Royal Lodge, but it's since been reported that Andrew will still benefit from staff off the back of his brother King Charles. He's thought to have offered the wider staff at Sandringham House to help Andrew when needed. Said to have offered the use of cleaners, groundsmen, and a cook when his brother needs them. But apparently this hasn't gone down well with Andrew. It's thought that in his old property he was able to help have a room for live-in staff, whereas in Marsh Farm, he's not going to have room for that. Royal expert Tom Sykes has told the Mirror that Andrew wants a number of staff to attend to his every need, including a driver and police security, and was demanding a substantial 6 or 7 bedroom house on the Sandringham estate. So 5-bedroom Marsh Farm is not good enough for Andrew. Make sure you follow for more royal stories.
Andrew will reportedly move into the shoebox-size Marsh Farm, and all I want to say to that is the only shoebox-sized thing that he should be moving into is a jail cell. So he should probably thank his lucky stars that he's the brother of a king who can help shield him from going to jail, and stop complaining about his smaller mansion that he now has. Because if you didn't know, the Giuffre family is now criticizing the Met for dropping their inquiry into Andrew's smear campaign against her when she was alive. He hired people to smear her online while she was alive. And now, of course, Scotland Yard is deciding to not take the case. Why? Because he is the brother of the king. So when you say that the king has no power over any of the goings on in the government and in the police force, when we're talking about Harry, his own son, you are a liar, because he does. And he is pulling those strings for Andrew, but he will not pull those strings for Harry.
This 5-bedroom cottage, hidden in a quiet part of the Sandringham estate, holds deep emotional value. It is where Prince Philip spent his peaceful retirement years. Philip personally decorated the walls with his own art, redesigned the kitchen, and even developed a successful Perigord black truffle farm on the land. It was meant to be a calm retreat while Andrew's permanent home, Marsh Farm, was being renovated. But Andrew has a history of turning temporary stays into long-term situations. People close to the matter have raised concerns about how quickly these short stays become permanent. As one insider clearly said, they may never remove him again. Once he settles in, he refuses to leave. Those worries are now becoming real. Yet Andrew still seems comfortable with just 3 staff members and has no intention of leaving.
We now have confirmation that Andrew has been left with just 3 staff members. On Monday, he was driven 132 miles to Norfolk, where he's now going to live. As we know, this is going to be his new home, Marsh Farm, which is on the Sandringham estate, but it is still undergoing renovations. So it's thought he's going to stay at another property in the meantime, but he's been pushed out of the Royal Lodge amid the latest drop of the Epstein files. And he's only been left with 3 staff members, which to the ordinary person probably sounds like plenty, but for Andrew, that's actually a significant downgrade. And to add to the sting, the staff have actually been told that if they don't feel comfortable working for him, they don't have to. A source told The Sun, "People who have been with him for years are off. It will likely be a skeleton staff at best. It's possible for the first time in his life he will have to open the front door to people himself." It's also been claimed that there's a long list of staff that are refusing to work for him. It's thought he will permanently move into Marsh Farm from April. Make sure you follow for more royal stories.
It's a very grim, drizzly day in the area today, and people have told me that locals aren't too happy about Andrew moving into the Sandringham estate. There have already been posters put up in the area, basically protesting against him moving in. Some people aren't happy about how that will affect the area, potentially, but these have since been taken down. It's such a quiet area. It really does feel completely different to royal residence that you're used to. This is by no means the gates of Buckingham Palace. It feels quite ordinary, really, and not where you'd imagine the son of a queen to be living. The front garden is quite muddy, quite boggy, and it's a charming residence, but by no means the palatial place that he's used to living in, really.
Prince Andrew's new neighbours are not happy that he is moving in. Andrew, formerly Prince Andrew, is moving to Sandringham after being kicked out of the Royal Lodge. His new neighbours are not very happy about this. Now, this is the property that he is eventually going to be moving into. This is Marsh Farm, and it's described as needing a lot of renovation, so in the meantime, he's not staying there, but he's thought to have a move-in date of April. Neighbours who are going to be living nearby have said that they are not happy that he is moving in. He's already brought a lot of negative attention to the area, and they're not happy with the allegations against him. When speaking to the Mirror, one woman said, "I think my best thought is that he should exile himself and put us all out of our misery." Another worker said that he should be locked up and justice served. And another woman said that she was not happy that he was going to be living in such close proximity. There have also been posters appearing around the area near King's Lynn. These posters are not the most flattering towards Andrew. In fact, they refer to him as Sweaty Andrew and essentially tell him to go home to Windsor. Make sure you follow for more royal stories.
Matt Wilkinson, royal editor at The Sun, has pointed out the growing pressure happening behind the scenes. The royal family often uses Wood Farm during holidays, and with Easter 2026 coming closer, extended family members expect to use the cottage for their own breaks. The timing could not be worse. Easter was meant to be when Andrew moved to Marsh Farm, but the work there is in terrible condition. The property needs major rewiring, plaster repairs, asbestos removal, and action against a serious rat problem. Although security cameras, a no-fly zone, and Sky TV have been added, the house is still not ready to live in. Andrew's situation became even worse on February 19, 2026, his 66th birthday. Police reportedly held him for 11 hours over suspicion of misconduct in public office. Authorities are investigating whether he shared sensitive government information with Epstein during his time as a UK trade envoy. These allegations carry the possibility of a life sentence, making him one of the most controversial figures in modern royal history. Wood Farm itself has a troubling past that reflects Andrew's current situation. In the early 1900s, Prince John, the youngest son of King George V, was sent there to live in isolation until his death in 1919. Later, the cottage became known as a divorce home when Sarah Ferguson stayed there in 1992 after being excluded from formal events at Sandringham House. Many people in Britain are unhappy because Andrew is still enjoying a high-standard home, modern upgrades, and additional benefits like a chef and a valet.
Putting him there in exile, to your average hard-working Brit, Dickie, in exile in a 5-bedroom paid-for house with a chef and a valet is not exile. And one gets the feeling, and I know what you're saying about the newspapers, one gets the feeling, and I know it's perhaps seen as a little bit unfair and he's getting it all, not enough has been done. It's not enough as yet for the British people. Does that make sense to you, what I'm saying?
It does make sense, but until the police have finished their investigation, there's a lot more that can be done. Look, he is being investigated. Under ongoing investigation is what they're doing. They're investigating this public duty aspect of it, but also investigating the possible question of corruption and giving papers of a sensitive nature. They've got a long investigation ahead of them, and at the moment he's stuck at the Sandringham estate. He can't go out the way and live grandly as he was in Windsor. He can't go riding horses. All he can do is use Shanks's pony, which are his 2 legs, and walk the dogs on an estate. He's got to get some exercise, but he's got to be able to get exercise without cameras popping him all the time.
There's going to be a few empty seats at the annual royal family gathering this Easter. The former Prince Andrew has been banished from public life and no longer welcome at family events. Even in times of religious celebration, there is no forgiveness for the shame he has brought on the royal family. His ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson, who was welcomed back to the royal family fold when Charles became king, is also persona non grata, after she and Andrew were exposed for their close relationship with the late convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. The latest tranche of documents released by US investigators probing Epstein's horrific crimes unveiled Andrew and Sarah's sickeningly close relationship with the sex offender, even after he was convicted and jailed. Andrew has been forced out of his Windsor home, the 30-room mansion Royal Lodge. He remains under investigation after being arrested on allegations of misconduct in a public office, and Sarah has been in hiding ever since the latest scandal to besiege them broke several weeks ago. The fallout has also had a devastating effect on their daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie, who were named numerous times in the files and even accompanied their mother to see Epstein in the US 5 days after he was released from jail. The princesses, who despite their parents' thirst for the trappings of royal privilege, have managed to carve lives out for themselves away from the institution. While there is no suggestion that either Beatrice or Eugenie are guilty of any wrongdoing, their very mention in the Epstein files is an uncomfortable truth for the king and his family. Andrew and Fergie's downfall strikes at the heart of what the king and Prince William are united in stepping away from. The perception of a family dripping in privilege and entitlement that the former Duke and Duchess of York never shied away from. Royal sources suggest Beatrice and Eugenie have, with the king's understanding, made alternative arrangements this Easter and will not be at Windsor for the commemorations. But after being welcomed by the family for Christmas, uncertainty remains over any future invitations as the tawdry scandal left by Epstein's crimes continues to loom over the institution.
The situation is deeply ironic. Andrew, now widely rejected, has ended up in the same place where the royal family has historically kept members they wanted out of sight. Even people living nearby and workers on the estate have started turning against him.
What's your honest opinion of Andrew? Well, it's been great fun. Thank you so much for having me here today. Oh, wow. So my interaction with him were very few and far between. And when I did have any dealings with him, in fairness to him, he was polite. You know, there would be a kind of thank you or whatever. But there was also this feeling of, as a lot of people described, entitled feeling. You got the feeling he thought he was better than everyone, just his mannerisms and the way he was. And what was weird for me was no other member of the family did you get that vibe from. Not from the Queen, not from Prince Philip, not from his brother Charles, not from Anne, none of them. But with him, he had this, I can't even explain it to you. I just didn't want to be in his presence. I mean, you know, luckily I didn't have to do much for him. And as I said, I remember being at, again, the wedding of the King and Queen, and he was there and there were staff members there, and he didn't speak to any of the staff members that were there as guests. He would only speak to the, if you like, the family or family friends. So it's quite sad actually, because I don't know why he was like that. But and also, you know, from colleagues in the royal household, none of them ever have a nice thing to say about him. And I always see the good in everyone. So it's quite sad. So I think what I'd say is he wasn't, put it this way, he wasn't one of the most popular royals.
The King's relationship with Andrew, did you ever see much evidence of a relationship? In
honesty, I don't ever, and this is just my personal view, I don't ever remember him being that close. I really don't. If you were to say to me, is the King close to any of his brothers and sisters? Yes, Anne, absolutely, Princess Anne. But I think as far as Andrew went, I didn't see much of him, and I didn't have many dealings with him, if that gives you an idea. Maybe the King always had an inkling, who knows, maybe he had a feeling. But no, he didn't have much to do. Not really that much to do with them, other than obviously family get-togethers and occasions when they had to obviously all be together. But no, they weren't. I wouldn't have, from a personal point of view, I wouldn't have said they were particularly close.
What did you make of him getting arrested?
When I saw him getting arrested, it was a shock. I don't think we've had a royal be arrested since the time of Charles I. So it was unprecedented to actually see what took place, and I think that's why the King had removed the titles and everything, because I think the King knew what was coming. I honestly genuinely believe that the household, you know, they've got their contacts. Of course they have their contacts. They work with the government. They work with the police. I mean, the police protect them. So they're going to be aware 100% of what's coming.
A local resident, Luke Schreier, expressed what many feel, saying Andrew should leave because he has become an embarrassment to the country. Even more surprising, estate workers are reportedly refusing to serve him. Sources say staff have been told they can choose not to work for Andrew if they feel uneasy, and many have already declined. His long-standing living situation with his ex-wife Sarah Ferguson is also coming to an end. After many years of sharing a home, Ferguson is said to be at her limit and is now looking for a place in Windsor, signaling the loss of his final support. What Andrew will face at Marsh Farm is nothing like Royal Lodge. He's expected to move into a simple red brick farmhouse with risks of flooding, damaged roads full of potholes, rodent problems, and security placed in a used mobile home costing around $33,000. Adding further discomfort, 20 tankers recently delivered 150,000 gallons of liquid manure to the surrounding fields. Watch this clip because it reveals everything.
Front page of the Mirror this morning, second sighting of Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. That's not the interesting thing. You know, such a hard life. He's driving with a detective. Do your duty. Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor has a duty to be questioned in the US about his relationship with paedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein, a leading Democrat, Jamie Raskin, senator last night. That changes the game, doesn't it?
Well, can I first just say, you and I, we got so much hostility. There was an article written over in the United States on Soap Opera Digest about how people were mad at us for being critical of Andrew for being spotted earlier this week. So now I'm tiptoeing around.
Sorry, hold on a second. Now, I'm going to have to share this with you, ladies. We got some criticism. You think I give a fat rat's backside? Seriously? Honestly? That tells me that certain people don't like questions about things that the general public want to talk about. What were we criticised for?
They said that we were giving Andrew a hard time.
He's a slimeball who lied to his family, lied to this country, and is best or was best friends with the worst convicted paedophile in the world. What more do they want?
I mean, you preach. I'm loving this energy coming from you. But yeah, so I was a little nervous to discuss another Andrew sighting based on the fact that we were kind of raked over the coals for our last exchange over it.
Well, I don't know where we were raked. If it was in America, I don't care. But I can tell you categorically that the people in this country genuinely are fed up going to work, paying their taxes, and still looking at a man who's got a chef and a valet and will not show any compassion or apology to anybody. That's the truth.
Well, I mean, I agree with you. I think he's an embarrassment, and I think he's a constant reminder of failure, you know, in the palace. And it's not necessarily an insult to King Charles, although he could have handled it sooner. I do think that the Queen, during her reign, should have been more aggressive. And unfortunately, Charles is left dealing with the consequences, and that's Andrew on the front page of papers every day until we find out whether or not he's going to be arrested again or prosecuted for this. Unfortunately, this is going to be a sin that hangs over the palace's head until we get those answers. And I don't think this is going to be executed quickly. I think we're looking at months, if not years, of them investigating.
As Andrew's biographer Andrew Loney explained, this is more than just a family dispute. It is a fight for the survival of the monarchy itself. Prince William is said to want this issue resolved before he becomes king, seeing Andrew as a problem that has damaged the image of the entire institution. As Easter weekend approaches, everyone is watching to see if Andrew will finally move or continue resisting. One thing is clear, the breakdown of his royal life is now complete. The shift from Prince Andrew to Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor is not only about losing titles. It represents the loss of a lifestyle he can no longer maintain or justify. If his pattern of resistance continues, Wood Farm may not be the final stop in this journey of forced humility. Thanks for watching on Famex.